Disclaimer: No Self-Hate is a mental health awareness platform, not a licensed therapy provider or certified psychological organization. All content is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice or a substitute for professional mental health care. If you are in crisis or need immediate support, please contact a licensed mental health provider or call, text 988 for the Crisis Lifeline, US only. Some topics may include sensitive mental health themes. Viewer discretion is advised. This channel may include brief use of copyrighted material under Fair Use, U.S. Copyright Law, Section 107, for commentary, education, and discussion.
Hello, and welcome to No Self-Hate, Season 1, Episode 5, 4 of 5, What is Wrong? I'm your host, Kevin, and I will be your guide for today's information. So, today we will take a look at what it means to be wrong. You know, a lot of us think we understand exactly what it means to be wrong, but a lot of it is guesswork. You know, have you ever defined what it means to be wrong? Or have you just went off instinct your whole life? Your moral framework, the things you were raised on, as far as your upbringing. What does wrong mean to you? When was the last time you did something wrong? When was the last time you looked at yourself and recognized that, hey, maybe this thing I am doing is wrong? Well, I want you to think about that as we get into today's episode. And the whole goal is to enhance our understanding of wrong, so that when we find ourselves in moral situations or situations that require us to do the right or wrong thing, we will have a deeper understanding of what wrong is. So far, we have expanded and enhanced our understanding of what it means to be right. So to keep everything balanced, we are going to take a look at what is wrong. And I'm so excited about today's information. We are going to look into a lot of things to make sure that we have that opportunity for growth so that we can see who we really are. Again, it's just looking in that mirror. It's taking that information and turning it into what you want it to be. All right. So before we get started, I would like to thank all of my supporters and subscribers. You all have been amazing. We are growing pretty good. We just topped 500 subscribers. Thank you all. I do this, for all of us, starting, with myself, so that I can be better for you all. And I'm hoping that you all are following the information in the same way, enhancing your relationships, enhancing your family dynamics, enhancing your happiness, peace, well-being. I hope these episodes are helping you, because they have definitely been helping me. And we've received a few testimonies or a little feedback about how No Self-Hate has been helping others. And I'm telling you, we are really moving the needle. And I want to thank you. All right. But we must continue to grow. We must continue to spread the word. So please like, subscribe, share, do what you must to make sure that we reach as many humans and as many people as we can, so that we can accelerate the evolution of human emotional intelligence together. All right. So let's get right into it. I don't want to keep talking your ear off. I'm so excited about this information. Let's go. All right, everyone. Let's get started. Let's get right into it. All right. So what is wrong? Is it just rule breaking, or is it something deeper? Something that erodes the fabric of trust and relationships, something that erodes your dignity, or even at a greater scale, humanity. In this episode, we're going to break down exactly what wrong is, not just in opinion, but in its moral, psychological, and universal forms. Here's what you'll discover today: a clear definition of wrong, the components of wrong, from intent to impact, and why awareness matters. Why do people do wrong? The personal, social, and emotional forces that lead to harmful choices. How the psyche plays a role in doing wrong. How bias, emotion, and moral rationalization can make harm feel justified. Universal moral wrongs, actions condemned across every culture, law, and belief system. Why these wrongs are universal, from ancient codes to modern law to the survival of human society. By the end of this episode, you'll see that understanding wrong isn't just about judgment, it's about awareness. Awareness that gives you the power to protect your humanity, your relationships, and the values that hold our world together. We want to think about how much wrong have we done, right? Are we aware of that? Are we okay with doing wrong? Now, I'm pretty sure there's groups of people out here, that are okay with that. Maybe because they don't have the knowledge, maybe because they're doing it out of survival. It could be a lot of reasons why people are doing wrong. But I just want us to look at ourselves in the mirror. And again, as we do with every episode, I want you to relax. I want you to be accountable. I don't want you to be defensive. I want you to stand in that mirror and I want you to see yourself so that we can fix it, so that we can move towards solutions, so that we can enhance our happiness, our peace, our reality, and those around us. Okay? So, the definition of wrong. First, wrong encompasses any action, inaction, thought, or intention that crosses moral, ethical, or legal lines and results in unjust harm. It's about the impact on oneself, others, society, or the environment. All right. So now let's break this down into three key dimensions. We have moral wrong. This is about breaching shared moral values like honesty, compassion, and fairness. It's what we as a society deem important for respectful and considerate living. Think about that. It's what we as society deem as important for respectful and considerate living. Could you imagine what society would be like without rules, without if wrong was never identified, if anyone could just do wrong as they please and just move about? Could you imagine where society would be? Next up, we have ethical wrongs. Here, we're looking at violations of professional, societal, or cultural codes. These are specific to contexts like workplace ethics or cultural norms. And we talked about that in What is Right, where we, or in our, what are morals versus ethics. We know that morals are something that we have personally, and we know that ethics are, outside of us, set by organizations, set by society, different things like that, where we have to follow these ethical codes, such as obeying the law. Um, there could be several codes that you can follow throughout life, depends on who you are, but they are there and they are available. Next up, we have legal wrong. Simply put, this is about breaking laws. It's where the legal system steps in to define and enforce boundaries. Okay? Think about that. Legal system. There's wrongs in the legal system that, this information is very important. I'm pretty sure there are quite a few people incarcerated right now that wished they could have seen some of this information that we are going through, where we talk about morality, where we talk about ethics. So, this is very important information. This could save someone from being in prison, or even worse, save someone, or even better, save someone's life. All right. So make sure you're sharing this, make sure you're spreading the word, because people can definitely use this. Now, understanding these dimensions help us see how wrongs can intersect and compound, impacting various areas of life. All right. As we explore further, consider how these dimensions might overlap in real life scenarios. All right, now that we understand what constitutes wrong, let's explore its key attributes. These attributes help us identify and understand the nature of wrongful actions. First, consider the harm based attribute. Wrong actions often cause damage, be it physical, emotional, or societal. Okay, when we do wrong, we cause damage physically, emotionally, or at a societal level. Next, we have the value based attribute. Wrong actions conflict with the core principles that we as a society hold dear. These principles guide our daily interactions and decisions. So think about that. A lot of people that break these value based attributes are normally operating in ignorance, or maybe it's just us. Maybe, maybe again, it still is rooted in ignorance, but a lot of it, I think, and we said that in episode What is Right, episode 5, 3 of 5, where we said that universally there is a conscious that we share, and that people ignore these value based attributes, these harm based attributes, and they still do wrong, right? So just keep that in your mind. Next up, we have relational aspect. This is a relational aspect where wrong actions can harm trust and damage relationships, impacting community cohesion. When trust is broken, it takes effort and time to rebuild. When trust is broken, it takes effort and time to rebuild across any relationship, whether that's you're a parent with children, and you break trust there. If you're in a relationship with someone, work, um, this applies across the board, where when trust is broken, it takes effort and time to rebuild. So that's incentive right there to save ourselves some time, save ourselves in our relationships some of the negativity that they go through, because of us operating in wrong and not necessarily understanding it. All right. Finally, we consider whether actions are intentional or negligent. Wrong can result from deliberate harm or from careless neglect. Understanding the intent behind an action is crucial for assessing responsibility. Excuse me. And again, I'll make a few mistakes, but this is a one take. We're going to go all the way through. But think about that. Understanding the intent behind an action is crucial for assessing responsibility. In episode 3 of 5, What is Right, we talked about aligning your intent with your actions. That is very important. A lot of us have good intent, but poor actions. You want to make sure that your intent is aligned with your actions. Um, if your intent was to be wrong, your actions may be wrong, right? We want to stay focused on the greater good at all times whenever we're dealing with this, right? So, what constitutes wrongness? Wrongness cannot be attributed to a singular factor. It's like it emerges from a complex interplay of interconnected elements. So there are a lot of things that are connected that support wrongness, when we operate in wrongness. All right, so let's dive into the first component of wrong: intent. Intent refers to the mindset behind an action. Think about whether the act was planned, impulsive, or accidental. This distinction is crucial because it can significantly shape how we perceive the act itself. For instance, consider the difference between planning to commit fraud and making an accidental error. Both have consequences, but the underlying intent behind these actions is quite different. The planned intent implies a deliberate choice, while an accidental error suggests a lack of intent. Meaning, you see how ignorance plays a role in everything. You see the importance of knowledge. You see how important it is for us to expand our knowledge. The journey of learning is forever, it never ends. It's too much to learn, it's not enough time. But it's important that we learn this information again in a temporal existence where, again, we will have to move on from this realm one day. It is important that we maximize our happiness, our peace, our fulfillment, and our life. It is important that we do that. We can't waste time anymore, right? Every day we have to put forth the effort. We have to uh, stay in pursuit of excellence. We have to push ourselves. We have to reflect. We have to be aware. These are things that we must do if the goal is to have peace, happiness, joy, successful relationships, success in life. We must understand how this plays into everything, right? In my experience, doing wrong has always, in whether my intent was to do wrong, has always somehow came back on me. Now, I don't know if it came back to me because I was expecting it and I kind of knew this unspoken law that what goes must come, right? But I know that it happened whenever I had that intent. And I want you to think about that. Think about when you've had the intent to do wrong, what happened? Did something come back on you? Was that thing pleasurable? Did that thing make you happy? Was it something peaceful? Was it something positive? Or was it something negative? I'll let you decide on that. We all have different experiences, but in my experience, when I did something wrong happened to me. All right, another crucial component of wrong is action and inaction. This is about the behavior itself, what was done, or sometimes what was not done. It's about choosing to act in a way that causes harm or choosing not to act when you have the ability to prevent harm. For example, stealing is an active choice that directly harms someone else. On the other hand, refusing to help someone in a life threatening situation is a choice of inaction, which can be equally damaging and which can be viewed as wrong. When you are in a position, and we talked about this on a couple of episodes as well, where you see something wrong happening, but your inaction means you're complicit with the wrong. So you're inadvertently a part of that wrong that someone else may be doing. You may see something happening where we use the bully example, where you saw that thing and you knew that that was wrong. You knew that what that bully was doing was causing harm to someone else, but you didn't say anything out of fear that you would be bullied. And again, we must, put our safety first. And, I understand that. But we also must stand for something. We must also have a voice, have the courage to speak your truth into reality. If you see something wrong that's happening, I'm not saying risk your life. I'm not saying, go down with the ship. I'm saying challenge yourself to find ways to speak about that, because your inaction is you being complicit with what's going on whenever there's a wrong happening. All right. You see someone being marginalized. Maybe you should say something. Um, you see someone, stealing. Maybe you should say something to them. Maybe not to the person that they're stealing from. Maybe you should say, hey, man, maybe you shouldn't do that. Right. But again, you got to be careful. It's very dangerous out here. Sometimes inaction is about safety for a lot of people, where they may see a wrong and they don't do anything about it out of fear that, they can be harmed. It could be a self preservation thing. So use that with discretion, but just keep that in mind. Wrong is wrong. Have the courage to be able to recognize that and find creative ways to express that information. Right. Next up, we have impact. All right. We've talked about intent and action or inaction. So the third component here is impact. Impact is about the consequences of an action or inaction. The consequences of an action or inaction. Where in that example, we said that you saw a bully bullying someone and your inaction allowed that person to get a black eye or to be physically harmed, right? That's what impact is. Or when you intentionally want to do something wrong. I've seen things where, people may play this game of cheating, right? Let's take relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever statuses or pronouns may be in that relationship. Um, but let's just take that as an example. And let's say, for instance, the male does something to the female and the female doesn't like it. and the female now has intent to retaliate or intent to strike back to get revenge. um this could be something that is very impactful to their relationship and to that person, because this whole back and forth thing, and you did this so I did this, and all of it's wrong. All of it is operating in wrong. If you truly love someone, you shouldn't want to harm them, even when harmed. Remember, we talked about unconditional forgiveness. If you take unconditional forgiveness with you in your relationships going forward, I assure you your relationships will last a lot longer, right? But we look at this, the impact of that. And now the male and the woman are not getting along well, and they're going back tit for tat on all this negativity and crazy stuff, and the impact of those actions is them now split. And let's say they have children involved, right? Now the impact has them split, and now it has the family broken, right? When the impact of action or inaction affects us. Okay. But let's just keep going. Impact is about the consequences of an action or inaction. These consequences can manifest in various forms: physical, emotional, economic, social, or environmental. Each type of harm has a ripple effect that can deeply affect individuals and communities. Consider the example of polluting a river. This isn't just an environmental issue, it can have severe health implications for an entire community. People may suffer from waterborne diseases, leading to economic hardships and social disruptions. Okay? Understanding the impact helps us appreciate the broader scope of our actions and emphasizes the importance of considering long term consequences, right? Before you move and you think about doing something wrong, maybe we need to think about the impact or the consequences of our actions, right? Now, you'll only be able to see what you're able to see when you're trying to look at consequences. But the more education and information that you have, the more opportunities you will have to discover the consequences of your actions. That's why it's important to keep educating ourselves. This is an endless journey. This is an educational attempt into perpetuality. Forever, we must educate ourselves, because the more we learn, the more options we give ourselves. All right. The more we can see the consequences of our actions. Okay. All right. This part examines whether the wrongdoer knew or reasonably should have known that their actions were harmful. Reasonably should have known. If they knew, or if they reasonably should have known. That's awareness. All right. Did you know that you were doing something wrong? And I've been down this road. Again, I am not holier than thou. I take this information, I run it through my life, I run it through my experiences. I stand in that mirror just like you, and I honestly critique myself in positive ways to identify opportunities for growth within my mindset, my psychology, my physicality, my emotional state, my spiritual state. This is something that I do all the time. But what we're doing now is increasing that awareness, right? But when it comes to this piece, it's it's just asking, when you did that wrong thing, did you know you were doing something wrong? Or should you have reasonably known that you were doing something wrong? Some people would say if you're 30 years old, um, you should have a firm understanding of what is right or what is wrong. Reasonably. Right now, there are cases where, again, we talked about it, where there may be people that may have never had any moral frameworks, any proper upbringings. They could have been thrown through the system as far as like adoption or different things like that, and bounced around to different families. In some weird way, they never really learned a moral code, right? But if we're thinking reasonably, a 30-year-old should have some idea of when they're doing something wrong. Okay. But just think about that. You know, have you done things where you know you should have known better? Or have you done things where you knew better? Wrong things. All right. Consider the example of knowingly selling faulty products. It's not just the act of selling that is wrong, but the awareness of the potential harm these products could cause. I saw someone selling laundry detergent, and I don't know where they got this laundry detergent from, but they got it out of their trunk. And could you imagine buying that faulty product and taking it home and washing your clothes and the clothes for your children, and your children break out in hives or something because there's some illegal chemical in there that, maybe shouldn't have been used to wash clothes, right? That's what we have to think about there. So, this awareness differentiates a genuine mistake from a deliberate wrongdoing. Awareness highlights the responsibility individuals and organizations have to understand the impact of their actions. You have a responsibility to understand the impact of your actions on people, on yourself, on others. So we must learn these things. We must assess, if we're going to make a decision, what are the consequences? What are the risks involved? How will my future turn out if I do this thing? You must weigh this stuff, because if you react off impulse and you do something wrong, it could cost you your freedom. If you react off emotions and anger, you could do something wrong and it can cost you your freedom. You need that awareness in those tough situations to recognize that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be doing this thing, or this thing just doesn't feel right. That's the awareness piece. Okay. It's a reminder that ignorance is rarely an excuse when harm is involved. Ignorance is rarely an excuse. There's a certain amount of information that we expect every person to have at different ages, right? It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean that everyone acquires this knowledge at that age. So, for example, we expected a 5-year-old to know how to say their ABCs. Right? We expect a 12-year-old to know the difference between a lie and telling the truth, right? We expect a 20-year-old to understand the law and understand that the decisions that they make could break the law or put them in legal situations, right? So we want people to have certain levels of information, but there's no document that says, okay, by this age you should have this, by this age you should have that, right? We expect people to know that stuff, but they don't. But that's not an excuse. Ignorance is not an excuse in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of a lot of places. And I've been on the other side of this where I was like, well, I didn't know. And people were like, well, we're sorry you didn't put in the effort to educate yourself about the things that are going on around you in your community and, at the law level, right? And from that point, you have to put in the work. You have to be self-driven, where whatever state you live in, you have looked up all of the laws. You have read all of the laws and understand what is expected of you. It's almost like, as a citizen of the United States, that should be common knowledge that no matter where you live, you should be aware of state laws and you should be aware of federal laws so that you can ensure that you do not break these things unintentionally, or, if you're going to break them, you're going to do it intentionally. That's just what you do. But yeah, that's how you have to think about this. Okay. Right. Next up. Okay, next up we have violation of principle. So let's explore another essential component of wrongdoing, the violation of moral or ethical principles. These principles include honesty, fairness, empathy, and justice. Values that guide our behavior and our decisions. We talked about this. We specifically plan to go over morals and ethics for this information to lay the groundwork for you to better understand this information. And across the board, there are expectations of honesty, fairness, empathy, and justice. How many of us know that we have expectations of having empathy for each other? It's hard to see. I'm driving in traffic all of the time, and it's hard to see that there should be a common knowledge that we all should have empathy and grace and mercy for each other. Right? So having that empathy is what we have to explore. It is very rare to see that, because once we become emotional, once we become angry, we justify wrong. Okay, so that's why it's very important to have emotional intelligence, so that in these situations, we're able to have the awareness and we're able to have integrity when it comes to our morals and ethics, so that we don't violate our principles. All right. So now consider the example of lying under oath. This isn't just a breach of honesty, it undermines trust and fairness within the justice system. The key takeaway here is recognizing which principles are being compromised when wrongs occur. By understanding these violations, we can better assess the impact and intent behind our actions. How might these principles influence our perception of right and wrong in everyday situations? How does honesty, fairness, empathy, and justice influence our perception of right and wrong? That's why it's very important to have that moral framework. Again, if you're, in a rare group of people that have never learned morals, we have that information out here for you. Just go through the No Self Hate episodes and you will find what you're looking for. But for those that may have that framework and have everything, keeping integrity with that framework, keeping that framework up to par is very important in making sure that we are not violating our principles and our morals and our ethics. All right, so let's explore the last key component of wrongdoing, which is persistence. Now, this aspect is about whether the wrongdoing is an isolated incident or part of a repeated pattern. Consider this example. Oh, sorry about that, y'all. No, I got to do it once. I got to do it once every episode. All right, so consider this example. An organization that continues discriminatory hiring practices even after being warned. This is very important. Organizations must educate their staff. It is very important because discrimination is a gray area, right? And the law recognizes that area is kind of like, right? You can't say for sure. You can't say it didn't happen, right? So it kind of puts organizations in a bad position. Now, it is very important that if you have an organization, that you ensure that your employees all understand the law and have a deep understanding of the law. Because if not, in this example, we talk about continuing discriminatory hiring practices after being warned. That organization could have been warned by the EEOC or could have been warned by lawsuits or something like that. And they still keep it up, right? That's a real thing. I like to highlight real things that I've experienced or I've seen out here, and this is definitely one of those. Now, the persistence of such actions highlights a deeper issue beyond a single mistake. It's systematic and deliberate, meaning it's persistent. As we reflect on this, think about how the persistence of a wrong can erode trust and perpetuate harm, making it more damaging over time. I want you to think about that. Think about the persistence of a wrong. Have you ever been persistent with a wrong? Has someone in your life been persistent in their wrongdoing? How did that erode your trust for that person? If you're even being wrong to yourself, do you trust yourself? These are just good questions, right? So, understanding persistence helps us recognize when corrective actions are necessary to break harmful cycles. Now, this is that veil of consciousness we talk about where some people just can't see beyond the paywall. The paywall is knowledge and education. If this person is not actively seeking knowledge and identifying areas where they normally wouldn't look for knowledge, they may miss this important information. Okay. And they may not be able to break harmful cycles. They may not be aware that they are in a cycle. Okay. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to help break these cycles. We're here to wake up and wake people up and let them see that they are acting in a harmful cycle or in wrong behavior, and giving them the opportunity to, if they want to, change it and make it better. All right. All right, so that was a good one. We got through that. Next up, we're going to talk about how does our inner psychology shape wrong choices. So let's take a look at an intriguing aspect of human behavior. How our inner psychology influences the choices we make, particularly the wrong ones. Firstly, it's essential to understand that our inner psychology landscape profoundly affects our decision making. Our personal biases, emotions, and mental frameworks can sometimes lead us astray. Consider how often we might rationalize a poor choice because it aligns with our internal beliefs or emotions. Rationalize a poor choice where we convince ourselves that something that we did was, it made me feel better. It was wrong, but it made me feel better. All right. One key factor is cognitive dissonance, where we struggle between competing perceptions, often leading to justifying wrong actions. This internal conflict is a powerful driver, nudging us to make choices that align with our self image, even if they're ethically questionable. Additionally, emotional states such as anger or fear can cloud our judgment, pushing us towards decisions that feel justified in the moment but are regretted later. Recognizing these influences can help us navigate and mitigate making wrong choices. I just went through this. And it's a tough thing to watch where someone is actively wrong and you're witnessing it. But it's like they're in like a state of mind. It's like a trance that they refuse to reflect and see that, hey, these things I'm saying, the way that I'm acting, my tone of voice is wrong. And they can't see that because they're clouded by anger. They're clouded by fear. They're clouded by retaliation. And I don't know if you've seen this, and let me know if you have. Have you seen it where someone was clearly wrong, but instead of having the strength to correct that behavior in the moment, even when it's at its hottest temperature, if someone is in an argument and they say something, they say an insult, they hurl an insult, how many people do you know are able to catch that like, whoa, wait, I didn't mean that. I am just a little upset right now, and I just said something I did not mean. How many people do you know can actively do that in the heat of the battle? This is something that we must learn. We must learn to recover in these tough situations, because if you lean into the wrong, it's only going to have a more powerful impact on you, your relationships, or someone else. We must have the recovery skills to know when we're doing something wrong and to recover from that. And we go back to our forgiveness episodes where we apologize and we ask for forgiveness and we forgive ourselves and we move on, right? But you have to have that recovery time. The faster, the better. All right. As we move forward, we'll explore specific psychological mechanisms like self-justification and moral licensing. We talked about moral licensing in our what is right or wrong versus wrong video, I believe, which I think was one of 5 of episode 5. But we talked about moral licensing, which further illustrates how our psyche plays into being wrong. All right. That moral licensing. Oh, I gave the example of my children possibly, and it was a hypothetical, them doing something that I like, maybe cleaning up or something, and then feeling entitled to go take something without asking. That's an example of that moral licenses. They felt that because they did something right, it's okay to do something wrong. All right, so let's dive into how our psyche plays a crucial role in being wrong. So, first we have cognitive distortions and biases. Okay. Okay, so in cognitive distortions and biases, we have self-justification. This is where we might reframe harmful actions as necessary or even deserve. We might reframe it. We self-justify. We say, oh, this needs to happen because this thing happened to me. We justify it to ourselves. We justify the wrong to ourselves, that it's okay to do this because this thing happened to me. Next, there's moral licensing. This involves believing that our past good deeds can somehow excuse our present wrongdoing. It's like giving ourselves a free pass, which can lead us down a slippery slope. All right, when you give yourself that free pass, you may travel deep into wrongness. Okay. Then we encounter confirmation bias. We talked about that as well. Here, we actively seek out information that supports our harmful choices, ignoring anything that contradicts them. It's as if we're wearing blinders, only seeing what we want to see. And I just gave you an example of that, where a person feels morally right in their actions, where they feel that I have confirmation to do this because this thing happened to me. My feelings were hurt, so I can act out this way. This person disrespected me, so because I was disrespected, I have a free pass to do this thing. Okay? That's just a real thing, right? So finally, there's the denial of harm. This is where we convince ourselves that our actions don't really hurt anyone. Let's pause here. When we convince ourselves that our actions don't hurt anyone or hasn't harmed anyone, how can we do that? If we're intellectual, if we're educated enough and we think about it, can we determine if we've harmed someone else? Or do we have to trust them when they tell us that we've harmed them? I want you to think about that. Denial of harm. Well, I didn't do that. I had an experience like that where, and I never get into like specifics, but these are real examples. That's why they're able to come to my mind, because I'm able to see these things in real time. But I had an experience where, I was having positive confrontation or positive conflict with someone about an issue. And I was telling this person that their actions made me feel this way, made me feel a certain type of way. And that person denied it. That person said, nah, that's not what happened. I'm like, but wait, how can you tell me how I feel about your actions? See, that's that denial of harm. That person was oblivious. They were so emotional, and they felt that it's okay to ignore the harm that they've caused because they're angry or their feelings are hurt or because something happened that they didn't like. Okay? This is real. So I want you to work on that. I want you to work on self-justification, moral licensing, confirmation bias, and denial of harm. Please be educated enough to never deny that you've harmed someone when they tell you. If they told you that you've harmed them, please trust them. Don't waste any time trying to convince them that you didn't harm them. They've made the choice already. Instead of wasting your time there, let's focus our efforts on improving the situation. Let's find solutions. Let's right that wrong in those situations. Okay. Cognitive distortions and biases is very important. These cognitive distortions and biases show us how our minds can lead us astray, often without us realizing it. Understanding these can help us make more informed and ethical choices. Okay. Understanding your cognitive distortions and biases. Okay. Let's get the denial of harm off the table. If someone tells you you hurt them, believe them. Okay. Now, there's a small window where people may be using manipulative victimhood tactics, and I'll let you leave that to your discretion. If that person has a history of self-victimization and victimhood, then hey, you pay attention, and maybe that is manipulation. But even tread lightly there, because when someone tells you that you've harmed them, you again, to deny it to me is anti-intellectual, because we don't know how we've affected someone else. And to assume that position costs us our credibility in that situation and ultimately makes us look, bad. Okay. Next up, emotional drivers. This is the real one. Emotional drivers. When we feel emotional, that plays into the psyche when it comes to being wrong. All right. So let's delve into how emotions can drive us towards being wrong. First, there's anger and resentment. These feelings can lead us to seek revenge or act impulsively without considering the consequences. Then there's fear. So wait, before we go to fear, anger and resentment. These feelings can lead us to seek revenge or act impulsively without considering the consequences. You know how many people right now are in prison because they got angry and they acted impulsively, they sought revenge, and now their days are spent locked up because they didn't have the emotional intelligence to win that one situation, that one conversation. You're going to be in thousands of conversations in your life. Could you imagine one of them taking you down because you didn't have the emotional intelligence or the emotional fortitude to make it through that situation? That's real, right? So next up, we have fear. Often we choose self-preservation, prioritizing our own safety or comfort over doing what's morally right. That's a good one. Self-preservation. That goes back to our example of stealing not to starve, right? Self-preservation. And this is that gray area. Is this wrong? Is it wrong for a human to steal food to live? Or are they wrong because they stole? Split down the middle, right? You have some people that believe that no matter what, you shouldn't steal. Right? And then you have some people that understand, hey, we're gonna lose a human because someone stole a bag of grapes from the store. So that's that gray area, right? Where we're prioritizing our own safety and comfort over doing what's morally right. Okay. Envy can also play a role. It might push us to undermine others in an attempt to balance what we see as inequality. Lastly, despair or apathy can cause us to lose the will to care about the moral consequences of our actions. Despair and apathy. You can become so desperate to win. That's why I tell my children, I tell my family, don't be willing to do anything to win. When you're willing to do anything to win, you will say and do anything to win. Find victories elsewhere in life. Find victories in your career. Find victories in your education. You shouldn't have to find trivial micro victories to self-validate. If you do, that's okay. We're all different. But I am going to work on making sure that I don't have to have these trivial victories because I could become desperate and I could not care about the moral consequences of my actions. Okay. These emotional drivers remind us that our feelings can heavily influence our decisions, often leading us astray. Let's be mindful of these emotions as we navigate our choices. All right. Emotional drivers. All right. Pay attention to that. Moral disengagement mechanisms, Albert Bandura's theory. All right, so let's start with moral justification, a powerful mechanism where individuals rationalize harmful actions by believing they're serving the greater good. This can be dangerously persuasive, and often leads to overlooking the real consequences of one's actions. All right, where we use this mechanism of I'm doing the greater good even though it's the wrong thing. What examples can you think of for that? Where someone has justified doing wrong by saying they're doing the greater good. This needs to happen for the greater good. And we know the greater good affects the whole, a whole more holistic approach, right? Think about that and how dangerous that can be. And how a person in that mindset could overlook the consequences of their actions or the impact of their actions on other people, right? And I often ask, like, why would people want to impact each other in a harmful way? And I could just have a unique perspective of life, but I don't want to harm anyone. I don't want to. I don't. I honestly don't. Now, it again, I'm human and it happens, but I just want to know, like, why do people want to harm each other? If you're happy and you're winning in life, why do you want to see someone else suffer or go through misery? Just think about that. Or think about, if you've seen that in other people, right? Next, euphemistic labeling is prevalent, where softened language like collateral damage masks the true impact of actions. It makes the unacceptable seem more palatable, allowing individuals to distance themselves from emotionally from the harm that they caused. Collateral damage. I've seen that in a lot of levels of life, right? Where there's this euphemistic labeling. Oh, well, again, all in support of the greater good, right? Next up is advantageous comparison. Involves comparing one's actions to worse scenarios, like saying, at least I'm not as bad as them. This minimizes this minimizes personal responsibility and justifies unethical behavior. Someone did something worse than you, but it's in the same group of what you did, but you're like, hey, at least I didn't go that far. Were you still wrong? Right? Again, wrong. Like, think about the mind that has to thrive off wrong. What has happened there? What trauma is there? What I'm trying to think, what would my conscious and internals have to be for me to actively seek doing wrong to people and to myself? And maybe that's an area I'm blind in, maybe but I just don't quite understand how wrong would be beneficial and why people operate that way. It's too much stuff to do, to me, in my opinion. It's too much stuff we have to accomplish. We have to work, we have to take care of our children, we have to create, we have to innovate, we have to build, we have to clean, we have to cook. It's so much stuff that we have to take care of. It's almost like, how are people finding time to be wrong? It's just something that I think about. Now, let's consider displacement and diffusion of responsibility. These mechanisms allow individuals to shirk accountability by blaming others and claiming that everyone else is doing it. It's a way to alleviate guilt and evade moral judgment. And I think about the looting that I've seen, right? Where, let's take that example, where someone has diffused responsibility or displaced responsibility. Oh, this thing happened to us, so we can go do this thing. So moral licensing is there, right? But then when they go do this thing, they say, "Oh, well, I saw 70 other people um storming the Capitol, or I saw 70 other people looting this store, so everyone else was doing it. I felt it was okay for me to do it." That's how you've pacified that wrong in your mind. Everyone else was doing it. Okay. And that helped you alleviate guilt and evade moral judgment. Again, there are a lot of pitfalls when it comes to being wrong. And this is a lot of information. But again, I believe in you. I believe in me. I believe in us. I believe as we break this information down, we'll be able to apply this information more and more so that, again, we could get to that better place for ourselves and for those around us. Lastly, dehumanization is a severe form of moral disengagement. By seeing victims as less than human, individuals justify actions that would be otherwise condemned. I want you to think about that. Think about that. I could think of few. What comes to mind for you when we think about dehumanizing to justify a wrong? I won't lead you on that one. I want you to come up with your own information for that. Dehumanizing to justify a wrong. Oh, this person deserved this because they're this or because they did this. It was okay to take this person's existence away because I saw them reaching in their pocket. Oh, this person disobeyed this thing. So technically, what happened to them, they deserved it. That's that dehumanizing piece. All right, so understanding these mechanisms is crucial because they're often at play in everyday situations. Recognizing them helps us maintain our moral compass and fosters a more compassionate society. Again, we are no self-hating for each other together, individually, right? We're working on ourselves together so that we can impact society in better ways. Next up, impact of trauma. So let's explore how trauma impacts our ability to discern right from wrong. Childhood experiences. We talked about unresolved childhood trauma. If you are still having memories and thoughts from your childhood that are negative, that are traumatizing, they are not resolved. You could take a look at No Self-Hate Season 1, Episode 2, How to Resolve Trauma. And we have a few ideas or potential opportunities for growth in there for you so that you're no longer thinking about what happened to you at 8. Now, I can't judge because there's no telling what people have gone through. And I always say that. You just never know what people are going through. Okay? But to the best of your ability, please try to resolve that trauma if you're still thinking about anything from childhood. All right. We have a video to help walk you through that, but please resolve that. All right. Childhood experiences such as abuse, neglect, or exposure to violence can deeply distort one's ability to empathize with others. All right. For trauma survivors, harmful behaviors often become defense mechanisms. These individuals might engage in actions that seem wrong as a way to cope with their past experiences. All right. They might engage in actions that seem wrong as a way to cope with their past experiences. Trauma survivors. It's almost like a distraction from the trauma, right? But we want what? Post-traumatic growth. We want to resolve our trauma. It doesn't happen overnight. But again, we are in pursuit of excellence in our effort, in our integrity, in our moral compasses, in our ethical landscapes. Okay. Understanding these impacts allows us to approach situations with empathy and recognize that these behaviors aren't always born out of malice, but sometimes out of self-preservation. Okay. By recognizing the role of trauma, we can better address the root causes of harmful behaviors and support paths to healing. Okay? What's the old saying? Hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt other people because they're hurt and there's no solution for that hurt. When there's actually a solution on no self-hate in plenty of other channels, I've there are so many resources out here for dealing with your trauma. Okay, maybe the self-empowerment way isn't for you. Maybe talking to someone in your family isn't the way for you. You have to reach out to someone. You have to contact a therapist. You have to contact an organization. But just don't stand there with unresolved trauma doing nothing about it every day. Right? And again, I get it. There's a certain veil of consciousness when it comes to knowing that you are in trauma, right? Or that you are traumatized. Okay, but we must seek knowledge. We must seek information for this exact reason. So we can find our ways out of the cycles, the mazes, the paywalls, the veils, whatever. We must find our way out. We must become self-aware. All right. Next up is group influence. Firstly, conforming to group norms can be a powerful force. Even when these norms are harmful, we may feel compelled to align with them to fit in or gain acceptance. I talked about this last episode where a group of people could see something wrong happening, and if a person in power is doing that wrong, they will all go along with it because they don't want to rock the boat, right? So you got to watch that group influence. Be strong enough to stand on your own when it comes to righteousness. If the group you're with is operating in righteousness, by all means, let that group influence you. But I just want you to be on the lookout for group influence that pushes you towards negativity, that pushes you towards immorality. Okay? All right. So even when these norms are harmful, we may feel compelled to align with them to fit in or gain acceptance. It's a natural human tendency to want to belong. However, we need to stay vigilant about the values we're adopting. Okay? Hold on to your values. They're only as strong as you fight for them. All right. Next, consider the impact of tribalism. This us versus them mentality can overpower our innate empathy. When we start viewing the world in terms of opposing groups, our ability to empathize with those outside of our group diminishes. This is why fostering inclusivity is vital. It encourages understanding and connection across perceived divides. Okay. Group influence. Let's think about some groups in the world that like to influence each other to diminish their empathy for those outside of their group. What groups come to mind for you that want to diminish the empathy for those outside of their group? That's a whole nother rabbit hole, right? Why would they want to do that in the first place, right? Remember, I only acknowledge one group, and that group is humans. That is the only group I'm aware of. I don't know how these mad scientists have convinced themselves that there are other groups that exist. I have not seen any other group. I've only seen one group. I've been looking for this other group of humans my entire life. I have not found them yet. Can someone that's in a group that sees more than one group, please in the comments let me know your logic. Please. I am lost on that one. I just can't figure it out. All right. So when we start viewing the world in terms of opposing groups, and our ability to empathize with those outside our group diminishes. All right. This is why fostering inclusivity is vital. It encourages understanding and connection across perceived divides. These influences highlight the complex interplay between our social environment and individual choices. Let's keep these dynamics in mind as we explore what drives people to do wrong in the next section. So, what drives people to do wrong? What causes that? What we asked that question earlier in the episode. Why would somebody want to do wrong? Right? Self interest and greed. People often seek money, resources, or status, sometimes at the expense of others. This can manifest into actions like corporate fraud. It's crucial to consider how this impacts broader society. Okay? Self interest and greed is one of the things that drives us to do wrong. Some would say self preservation. All right? But I want you to think about your self interest and greed in the times that it has maybe made you, make some immoral decisions or do something wrong. Next up is power and control. The need to assert dominance or authority can drive individuals to harmful actions, such as in dictatorships or domestic abuse situations. Then we have fear and survival, right? In desperate situations like famines, people might harm others to avoid danger or loss. Gray area, right? Next up, ignorance also plays as a role. Okay, it has a role in what drives people to do wrong. They don't know, they just don't know, right? Sometimes individuals simply don't understand the laws or ethical implications of their actions, like spreading false medical advice. Okay, that's an example of ignorance, but we can think of plenty examples of ignorance when it comes to not understanding laws, ethics, or the harm caused by that wrong. Okay. Desperation is another driver, often rooted in poverty or addiction, leading to risky decisions such as robbery to pay rent. Desperation. So let's pause there. Poverty, addiction, or crisis situations leading to risky decisions. So that lets us know that if you are a person in poverty, or you are a person that's living in a low income community, perhaps, desperation is a real challenge for you. Think about it. I want you to think about the times that you've become so desperate that you were willing to do something wrong. Right? How did you get in that situation? Is there a way to get out of poverty? Is there a way to um, escape? Because we know desperation and ignorance run rampant in poverty, run rampant in low income situations or low resourced situations, right? Revenge and resentment. So finally, revenge and resentment can fuel actions like cyber harassment or where individuals retaliate for perceived or real wrongs. All right. These drivers are complex and interwoven, often leading to significant ethical dilemmas. Understanding them is key to addressing the root causes of wrongful actions. All right. We must understand our desperation. We must minimize our ignorance. We must control our emotions. We must focus on the greater good more so than self interest. Now, again, a lot of this stuff is gray, okay? But I'll let you use your discretion as you approach some of this. This is just my opinion. I'm just one perspective, but we are of many perspectives. And I want you to use your perspective on some of this stuff. All right. All right, so we got a couple more. So, social conditioning refers to growing up in environments where harmful actions are normalized, such as gang violence. This is where harmful behaviors are learned and perpetuated as part of daily life. It's crucial to understand how the environment shapes our actions and beliefs, often without us realizing it. I remember this growing up, right? I remember it was normalized to have gangs, right? To have these gangs normalize harming each other, or normalize, carrying illegal weapons, or justifying that confirmation bias. Oh, I need this weapon because somebody's after me. Like, I think about the social conditioning piece, and it is very important to me. Next up is moral rationalization, twisting moral logic to justify harm. They had it coming, right? For instance, so moral rationalization involves justifying harmful acts by twisting moral logic. For instance, someone might think they had it coming to excuse their actions. This form of rationalization allows individuals to sidestep feelings of guilt by convincing themselves that their actions are somehow deserved or justified. Right? Both factors highlight the importance of awareness and critical thinking in our moral decision making. It's not just about recognizing wrong, but understanding the underlying influences that lead to such actions. Okay? So now we have an idea of what drives us to do wrong. And a lot of this stuff is spot on. Social conditioning, ignorance, despair, desperation, these are parts of our environments. And if you're in any of these situations, you need to be aware that these are the challenges. These are the things that challenge your morality, that put you in gray areas. All right, I want you to be aware. I want you to stay solid in your values. I want you to have integrity in your morals. Okay? Do the best you can. Again, Rome was not built in one day. Things don't happen overnight, but again, the pursuit of excellence in our effort, that every day we get up, we're going to at least try to get better. Okay? And I have a lot to think about now that I'm seeing these wrong things. Right? As a person that grew up, again, in a certain level of poverty, I had to realize that desperation was a pitfall. It was a bear trap. That if in poverty, if you find yourself desperate, your freedom is in danger, your life is in danger, because you're going to morally justify whatever you need to do to survive. Right? And how do we prevent these desperate situations? Again, we educate ourselves. We work. We push the limits. Okay? Right. So what is a universal moral wrong? Okay? I want you to think about that. Universally, what do we agree on that is just horrible and wrong? Right? All right, so let's explore what we mean by a universal moral wrong. This concept refers to actions that are morally unacceptable across all cultures, religions, and societies. It's not just something society frowns upon, it's a violation of basic human dignity, safety, and trust. Now, we obviously have not covered every universal moral wrong in this episode, as I would need another hour or two to go over everyone. But we have gathered the ones that are most common across societies, across ancient codes and religious texts. Okay. And that's the most important piece, right? So there are a few key traits to understand. First, cultural consistency. These wrongs are condemned universally across different times and places. All right. Secondly, the harm principle. These actions cause significant unjust harm, whether physical, emotional, or societal. Thirdly, moral intuition. Most people recognize these actions as wrongly instinctively, even without formal education. Right? Moral intuition, that collective conscious we talked about. Your moral intuition. I love that. Moral intuition. Most people without formal education instinctively recognize it as a wrong. Right? Additionally, these actions are often explicitly prohibited in religious texts, laws, and human rights charters. They're a threat to human survival because they undermine the cooperation and trust that holds our society together. So I want you to think about that. If we're not operating and working together to be able to trust each other, to be able to stand next to someone on a bus stop without fear of something happening to you, you see how it erodes our society. These wrong things, whether that be ignorance or whether that be from intentional behavior. All right. But what's kept us together all of these years is having a certain level of decorum when it comes to morality. Okay. Across the board. Because if you think about it, if there wasn't this level of decorum in morality, which we do have some, we have a lot of it in the world, even at government levels to a certain extent, right? Where if we didn't have this moral intuition, everyone would have dropped bombs on each other and possibly wiped each other out by now, because we all couldn't agree to a certain level of societal behavior or cooperation or trust with thy neighbors, right? So understanding these traits help us recognize actions that are universally wrong, providing a foundation for building a more just and harmonious world. So, again, if you've never learned what's morally wrong, you have an opportunity to take a look at a few. I encourage you all to look deeper into some of this information. Obviously, I can't cover everything. It would take 4 hours, right? We would almost need to sign everyone up for a class, which may be coming soon, right? But we would have to have these conversations, over a longer period of time than just the hour and change that we're doing this episode. Okay. Next up, we talked about threat to human survival, undermines cooperation, trust, and safety. Yeah, and the foundations of civilization. So that's what moral wrongs are, their characteristics. So, what are the universal moral wrongs? Let's dive in. Taking innocent life. Can we all agree that taking innocent life? What's life? If we think about life, is a fly experiencing life? Yes. Is there energy in that fly? Is there something present in that fly for that organic material to move around and think and live, right? That's something else I want you to think about. I try not to even harm bugs anymore because I know that there's a light in there. There is life in there. And I just take it upon myself just to take it because it was buzzing around me, or because I saw it on the ground and then the opportunity to get it popped up, right? I'm so micro with it that I take it down to that level, right? Now, does that mean you should allow rodents to overrun your house? No, right? I think there is a certain limit when it comes to safety, whether that's diseases or harm that could be caused by something. But that's just at the life level. Let's switch it over to humans, all right? And if we look at this universal moral wrong, taking innocent life, we're thinking about humans, okay? um it gives it a little more perspective. So, murder, assassination, and genocide are stark examples. These acts are universally condemned because life is a fundamental right. When life is unjustly taken, it erodes trust and security within communities. I want you to think about that. In these communities where, I saw something a few months ago or a few weeks ago where someone was at the nightclub celebrating their birthday, and someone came by and shot the nightclub up or shot the line up, and a few people passed away and a few people were harmed. And the I don't know if everyone that was there offended the person that did the actual thing, right? That actually harmed those people. I don't know if everyone there did something to that person, but that person didn't care. That person went there, drunk off anger, drunk off, evil, drunk off negativity, drunk off low emotional intelligence, and they went there and they acted out their feelings, and it took innocent lives. That erodes the trust of our community. That erodes the security of our community. People want to feel safe being able to go out and celebrate. But you see how something like that, because of someone else's mental health, because of someone else's projections and emotional failures, lives were lost. See the importance of no self hate now? Do you get it? You understand now? Why we must spread this information? This is literally saving lives. We are educating those that may not be educated in emotional intelligence. We are educating those that may not be educated in the consequences of their actions. It is very important. Okay. The principle do not unalive. It's not just a social convention, it's ingrained in major religions, human rights laws, and ancient legal systems. This consistency underscores its universal moral status. As we reflect on these truths, let's consider how they shape our perceptions and our responsibilities in upholding the sanctity of life. Okay? I want you to think about that. It is wrong to take a life, an innocent life. And even that's subjective, right? What defines innocent? Right? Can innocent be anyone that's operating in ignorance? If we're all operating in some form of ignorance, is it okay to take a life? Just questions I'm asking. What do you think? Inflicting severe suffering. All right, so let's, as we're continuing our exploration of universal moral wrongs, by examining actions that inflict severe suffering, imagine the devastating impact of torture or cruelty, whether to humans or animals. These acts cross a fundamental moral line because they inflict unnecessary pain. The universality of this wrong is grounded in our shared values of compassion and empathy. These are not just virtues, they are keys to our survival and flourishing as a society. We need this. We need not to kill each other. We need not to inflict severe suffering. And again, these things can be subjective. What is severe suffering? Right? What could that mean? As we consider these examples, let's remember that our ability to empathize is what makes us human. Say that again. As we consider these examples, let's remember that our ability to empathize is what makes us human. You ever been around a friend or someone and let's say some news come down, something happens to someone, and you ever hear someone say, "Oh, that's what they get." That does something to me all of the time because where is the empathy for a being that's operating in some form of ignorance? Where's the empathy? We have to learn how to develop empathy. And a lot of us find it difficult because, you know, we may be suffering from a love deprivation. We may be hurt. So we're hurt and it's okay for other people to get hurt, right? But it's a moral wrong to inflict severe suffering. Okay. Each of us has a role in fostering a world where empathy prevails over cruelty, right? Are you doing your job to make sure that you are being empathetic to uh, our fellow humans? If we're all a part of one group, are you doing everything you need to do to make sure that you have mercy? Be merciful. Have empathy. Be merciful. Sometimes our emotions will make us think that someone deserves something and something is justified. It's really not. We all have to go home one day. Is there going to be accountability for our actions? And if so, are we acting in a way that we're willing to be accountable for? That's the question. All right. Next up, slavery and human trafficking. Let's explore another form of universal moral wrong, slavery and human trafficking. Okay. Examples of these wrongs include forced labor, sex trafficking, and debt bondage. Each of these situations reduces humans to mere property, taking away their autonomy and dignity. Why do we consider these actions universally wrong? It's because they strike at the very core of what makes us human, our autonomy, our freedom, and our dignity. These are not just crimes, they are violations of the essence of humanity. We must recognize and fight against these wrongs because everyone deserves to live with dignity and freedom. I agree with that 100%. Um this is a tough one here, right? Um as an American, a human American, um this is just something that, we look at the ignorance of man over time, and we look at the cruelty of man over time, whether that's slavery or human trafficking. And it's some pretty dark places that men go to, that we have gone in the history of time. Um, it's never too late to right these wrongs. I always feel that America will forever have that blemish, right? I often see a future of nations are that have higher moral codes in the future. And in the future, we'll look back and we'll look at how things came about, and we'll say, "Oh my God, what happened there? Why did they do that cruel thing?" Right? And it would be out of ignorance. It would be out of emotional ignorance. It would be out of spiritual ignorance, um, a spiritual deprivation, so to speak, when we look at things like this. It has happened for years. It is still happening now. People are being trafficked. I think I saw an episode where they say that, slavery may still be going on in the world, right? How horrible is that? You're telling me we were that anti-intellectual that we couldn't negotiate with someone, we had to force someone to do something? Where was our soft skills? Where was our empathy? Where was our mercy? Right? All of it's about control. All of it's about elevation. All of it's about supremacy. Oh, my group is more supreme. But instantly, when I hear that, I disregard it, and that person has zero credibility because why? There's only one group. So when I hear people start talking about their groups, I instantly disregard that person, and instantly consider that person being not credible. You don't have the credibility to insult me. You don't have the credibility to demean me because you are still stuck in an elementary course of whether or not it's one group or more. And because you're there, I can't give you the energy you want. Say what you want, live whatever projections or realities or insecurities that you may want to live for anyone, right? But, you know, as we explore intellectuality, we'll also understand that, a lot of these different things that have been going on lack they basically were anti-intellectual people that just don't get it. Even to this day, I see it on YouTube. I see a bunch of stuff, and I'm just looking at these people that would do anything to belong and feel like they're a part of something and feel like they're in control, right? But we must recognize and fight against these wrongs because everyone deserves to live with dignity and freedom. All right, got two of those for you. Let's keep moving. So next up we have violence, physical violence. So let's talk about another category of universal moral wrongs, sexual violence. This includes acts like sexual abuse, exploit, and exploitations of minors. These actions are universally condemned because they violate fundamental principles of bodily autonomy and consent. Consider the lasting harm and trauma they inflict. Survivors often face a long journey of healing, and the emotional scars can last a lifetime. Remember, we were talking about resolving your childhood trauma to the best of your ability. You want to get to post-traumatic growth. You want to make sure you're on top of this to the best of your ability. Again, I know people have been through some things, right? But we want to do the best we can. Reach out to people, use as many resources as we can, therapists, psychologists, friends, family, no self-hate, whatever you need to do. But this, if you have ever been a victim of something like this is horrible. And I explained this to my son, and I told him, I said, the problem with sexual violence is A, it violates consent. B, it violates bodily autonomy. But C, it introduces the mind to something way before it should be introduced to it. And I see in a lot of situations, and I've experienced this firsthand, where I've dealt with women or something like that in life that may have went through something traumatic in their childhood, such as sexual violence, and they've admittedly told me that they went through a period of promiscuity, right? Where they were overly promiscuous. And I talked to that person, I asked, I said, why do you think that happened? And that person said, I just loved the feeling. The feeling was great. That feeling became my God. That feeling became my everything. When I was this age and should have been playing with Barbies or playing with this or playing with that, I experienced something I wasn't so supposed to experience. And it took over my whole psyche. That all I could do was think about that thing. Even though when it happened to me, it was horribly wrong. But I highlight that to show you the scars that it leaves over time. I highlight that to show you that when these things happen, they echo for throughout a person's life, you know? And it is horribly wrong. This is definitely a universal moral wrong. Okay? You should be able to take care of yourself, put yourself together, uh present yourself in a way that make people want you. And I told my son that because I had to have this conversation. Like, hey man, you want to make sure that, you know, consent is everything. And, you want to make sure you're operating morally. I said, I told him, I said, if you present yourself in a certain way, you probably wouldn't have to do anything like this ever in life because people would come to you. Women would come to you. Right? If I'm taking care of myself, I'm looking good, I'm talking good, I'm educating myself, I'm going, I'm progressing in life, I'm presenting myself in, high fashion and not high fashion, but in high marks, in the sense of you could see when you look at me that I love myself. Other people will see that and want to come towards you. And you could find your girlfriend that you're always respectful to, that you always treat well, that you buy things for, and you don't have to take anything from anyone. They may want to engage with you consensually and as an adult, They may want to do that thing for you when you get to that age, right? Or whatever. A lot of people have, been through this thing, right? So present yourself well. You could avoid this possibly. There are a lot of beautiful humans on earth, and there are a lot that are lonely, and there are a lot that are respectful and that have morals. Align yourself with those. Okay? I pray for anyone that has ever went through anything like this. I pray that you have the tools to recover. I pray that you resolve this trauma if possible. This is horrible. All right? So just keep that in mind. All right. So consider the lasting harm and trauma they inflict. Survivors often face a long journey of healing, and the emotional scars can last a lifetime. Remember, the importance of recognizing these actions as universally wrong lies in our shared humanity. We all have a role in advocating for dignity and safety. As we move forward, think about how we can actively participate in creating a safer world for everyone. Excuse me, y'all. Theft and large scale deception. Let's explore the next category of universal moral wrongs: theft and large scale deception. These include acts like stealing, embezzlement, and fraud. Why are these considered universal moral wrongs? Well, they fundamentally undermine trust and economic fairness. Trust is a cornerstone of human exchange, and when it's compromised, it can lead to instability in communities and economies. Consider how theft not only impacts the victim directly, but also creates a ripple effect, eroding the sense of security within a community. By understanding these actions as universal moral wrongs, we can work towards fostering environments where honesty and fairness are prioritized, contributing to more stable and equitable societies. Equitable. Um, Someone once asked me, what's the difference between equality and equity, right? For those that may not know that. So there was an example where four people or five people were getting bikes. They were all going to go on a bike ride, going to go on a bike ride. One of the people out of the five was in a wheelchair. And it showed that equality was all five people being provided with a two-wheel bicycle. That's equality. Equity is making sure all five people can ride five bicycles. So maybe the bicycle for the person that's in a wheelchair needs to be specialized so that he or she can keep up with the other four. That is equity. Not just giving someone a bicycle that's in a wheelchair and say, hey, figure it out. That's equality. Equity is making sure that person has everything that they need to ride and move with everyone else. So I wanted to point that out. That's something that I recently learned, and it's very important. Okay. Next up, by understanding these actions as universal moral wrongs, we can work towards fostering environments where honesty and fairness are prioritized, contributing to more stable and equitable societies. All right. Betrayal of trust for harm. So consider examples like corruption, abuse of authority, and manipulating the vulnerable. These actions are universally wrong because they undermine the very foundation of leadership, justice, and communal safety. Corruption and abuse of authority erode trust in systems we rely on to be fair and just. When leaders engage in these actions, they betray the trust placed in them by the community. Manipulating the vulnerable exploits those who are often least able to defend themselves, further highlighting the moral gravity of these wrongs. As we reflect on these points, think about how they affect not just individuals, but entire communities, compromising our collective safety and well being. Next, we'll explore more profound impacts of universal moral wrongs on human diversity and survival. All right. So, I want you to think about that. Okay? I want you to think about the betrayal of trust for harm. All right? I won't go too deep into that one, but please. All right. First, let's consider the profound impact of ethnic cleansing and apartheid, historical and ongoing efforts to erase cultures and communities. These actions not only harm specific groups, but also impoverish humanity by diminishing our collective richness. Another horrific aspect is cultural erasure, where traditions, languages, and identities are deliberately destroyed. Wonder why somebody would have a reason to do that. This is an insult on our shared humanity, as it seeks to obliterate the unique contributions that each culture brings to the global tapestry. Let's remember, acknowledging these wrongs is the first steps towards preventing their recurrence. By understanding the universal nature of these moral failings, we commit to upholding human diversity and dignity, right? Genocide and systemic oppression. Systematic, excuse me. Uh, you see the picture. I hope you all were able to. I hope you all caught the theme of today's episode. Yep, genocide and systemic oppression. Let's move on. Right. So, severe neglect of dependence. So, imagine a society where the most vulnerable children, the elderly, and disabled individuals are left without care. This act of withholding essential care violates our fundamental responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves. This principle of protection is deeply embedded in human values. It's not just about providing care, it's about upholding the dignity of every individual, emphasizing our shared humanity and interconnectedness. It's crucial to recognize that neglect in any form undermines our collective moral fabric. By shining a light on these issues, we affirm our commitment to a society that prioritizes compassion and care for all of its members. Man, I can't wait till we get there. Can you picture it? We get past this grouping thing, this the anti-intellectual logic of groups. We move past that. We learn emotional technology for ourselves to help empower each individual. And then just imagine where we are as a society. I pray that this happens for our children. I pray that this happens for my lifetime, right? This is my effort to jumpstart that, right? But just imagine how beautiful that's going to be. We finally all agreed there's only one group. Okay. Um, we finally all agree that we're going to take care of each other and prioritize each other and have compassion and empathy and care for each other. Wow. I can't wait. I pray I see it in my lifetime, right? And if not mine, I pray that my children see it. Okay. So as we move forward, remember that our duty to the vulnerable is not just a moral obligation, but a testament to our humanity, right? Take care of the elderly. Take care of your babies and your children, right? And again, perfectionism is not the key. Right now, if you're a father that has a child that you haven't spoken to or that you don't know what's going on with them, reach out to that child. Try. We don't expect perfection. If there's some accountability that needs to be there, be man enough to stand in that accountability, right? Try. Try. I'm not saying fix everything. I'm not saying everything will be able to be fixed on one try. I'm saying that if you are a man or a person out here that needs to step up in their man role, in their father role, and you haven't been able to do it in 12, 11 years or something like that, I want you to be man enough today to try. Call that woman. Call that child. Schedule some time with that child. Introduce yourself to that child, right? Because it's morally wrong to neglect that dependent. Whether you're with that woman or not, that child is dependent upon your education. That child is dependent upon your presence. and you were strong enough to fix it. I know she got on your nerve. I know she disrespectful, but don't let the relationship of you and the mother cost you the relationship of you and the child. And some people say, well, Kevin, that's easier said than done. The woman may have raised my child to hate me or told my child all of these bad things about me. And that may be true. But you could try. You could try to change things. You could reach out. You know, don't give up. Right? So just keep that in mind. All right. So, final reflection for what is wrong. So, today we have went over the definition of wrong, which is actions, inactions, thoughts, or intentions that violate moral, ethical, or legal principles and cause unjust harm. The components of wrong are intent, action, and inaction, impact, awareness, and violation of principle. Reasons people do wrong is self-interest, fear, greed, desperation, revenge, ignorance, and social conditioning. Think about that. If you are existing in poverty or if you're in a low income, low resource area, I want you to understand that desperation and ignorance is an enemy of you. It is meant to destroy you. I want you to elevate, educate yourself. Okay? That's real. Realize that you are being socially conditioned. If all the people that you hang around only want to do negative things or violent things, you might need to think about rethinking hanging around those types of people. Okay. Um, the psyche's role in doing wrong: bias, emotion, moral rationalization, trauma, and group influence can make harm feel justified. So I want you to keep that in mind. Watch your biases, your emotions, your moral rationalization, trauma, and group influence. All right, stand on your own. If the group is moving towards good and beautiful, move with the group. But if the group is not moving towards righteousness and you've witnessed something that is wrong, have the integrity, the moral integrity, the moral intuition to fix that wrong. Don't watch wrongs happen around you and you just stand there and watch and cooperate, because your inactivity is going to make you complicit with the wrong. Right? Universal moral wrongs: murder of the innocent, torture, slavery, sexual violence, theft, betrayal of trust, genocide, oppression, and severe neglect. You find yourself doing any of that across all societies, ancient texts, religious texts, you are wrong. You are wrong. Okay, so why universal? Why are these universal wrongs? Found in ancient codes, reinforced in modern law, rooted in human survival. The key takeaway here is recognizing wrong protects life, trust, and dignity, and gives us the power to choose better. All right. So I want you to think about that as we move forward here. All right, make sure you get your No Self Hate mental health awareness apparel and accessories. And now they are available at NOSELFHATE.com. Spread the word. Awareness is everything. All right. So thank you for sharing for joining me today to go through this information. Thank you. I hope it is helping you. I hope it is helping you grow. I'm going to take back some of the information that we went through today and reflect on it and see where I can enhance my life. So I hope you're able to do the same. If you can, click the like button, subscribe for more captivating content, show your support by sharing, and leave a comment. Join us in the movement against self-hate as we collaborate to improve human emotional intelligence. And I'm signing off to the next episode. Thank you.